Okay, now in this one, we're going to cover something very important. Uh, you're going to use this in every program you write. Well, maybe not these particular ones, but this concept. So what we'd like to talk about now is a loop. A loop is something that runs repeatedly. It runs more than once. So let's make a variable. I'll call it x again, and we'll just call it 0. And now let's say I want something to run 5 times. So what I can do is I can say while x is less than 5, and then I can do something. Let's see. While x is less than 5, we will say console.log x, so we'll see what the value is. But then, after that, we'll increase the value of x by 1. So while x is less than 5, it'll just keep logging what the value of x is. So it'll say 0, and then it increases. Then it runs it again. So it becomes 1 after it's 0. And then it'll say, is 1 less than 5? It is less than 5. So spit that out into the console. So it'll output a 1 and change the number to 2. Then it'll run again. Is 2 less than 5? Yes. So it'll print out 2 and it'll increase to 3. Until it gets to 5, 5 is not less than 5. So it will fail this check at that point. And that's when it finally breaks out of what we call the loop. So it sort of runs this repeatedly in something we call a loop. And then once it fails to meet this condition, it'll break from the loop. So at the end, we'll say console.log. I don't know, loop completed. How about that? So let's run it. There we go. It'll start at 0, spits it out. It does that until it hits 5. Then it breaks out of this loop, and it writes loop completed. So you'll notice that, I set the thing to 0, and I logged this. So this line 10, is responsible for this. Variable equals 10 or 0 is, I just start it at 0, and I initialize this variable. This is the code we ran. It really only has console.log written once, but you'll notice that console.log was run 5 times. That's because it got stuck in a loop. It ran this code 5 times. That's why we call it a loop. So this is just one way to do a loop. It's not super common, I don't think, in JavaScript. We usually use slightly different loops, but this is sort of basic concept. Okay, there's another way to do this. So we kind of had while, the check at first. So what if I said 5 here? What happens? It says, is 5 less than 5? No, it's not. So it just skips it altogether. It never runs it even once. And then it just says loop completed. It should say loop bypassed because it never got run. So there's another way to do this if you want to make sure that this is run at least one time. You can put the while at the end, right afterwards, and instead on top you just put do. So do this thing while x is less than 5. So if I run it now, it runs it once. It does it. It'll log it, increase it to 6, and then it will keep going as long as the value is less than 5. Of course, it becomes 6, and then it will not run it a second time. But this way, you're guaranteed at least one execution. So you have while loop, and then you have a do while loop. We kind of call them like this: while versus do dash while. That's usually how we refer to these two types of structures in code or programming. So we got 2 different types of loops, and of course I'm going to go back to this version, and I could start at 0 and put the number of times I want it to run here. So while 10, I can get it to run 10 times, You don't have to use this thing though. You could just say, I want it to say 5 times that Ryan is a happy boy. I want it to say that 5 times. So I'm using these numbers to control how often it's run, so it's kind of collapsed it. It says that this happened 5 times. Ryan is a happy boy. I'm not using the number other than just to keep track of how many cycles I've done and when I should stop. So that's another way that loops are useful. You can you can iterate through numbers, a set of numbers, or you can just use those numbers to control how long the loop goes for, and you could otherwise ignore the numbers. You could do something else with your loop. So those are called loops, and that's a really important thing that you're going to use in pretty much every program that you write. There's one more thing I want to mention that I keep forgetting to mention. There are ways to write comments. So let's say I want to tell people that this variable stands, but let's say I want to say the number 5 is your number of times that the program is run. I can make a comment that isn't code. It's just a little note to myself where I can say number on the right is number of times loop runs. I don't know. Now that is a a comment. It helps me understand what I'm looking at. When you do // everything to the right of it on that line is not considered code. The program ignores it. It's just a note to yourself or to future programmers who might look at your code. That's called a single line quote, and you can put it on the same line as code, you just have to put it to the right side. Another type of way that you can comment something out, so this should run Ryan as a happy boy 5 times, I can do a multi-line comment by doing /* at the beginning and */ at the end. And everything between these two things gets turned into a multi-line comment. You can make longer notes to yourself this way, or if you're debugging, you can shut off little pieces of your code to see, like if you're getting an error, you can start commenting out bit by bit, one piece at a time, comment a part of your code out, run it, okay, I'm still getting the error, so maybe that part of the code isn't the problem, and then you can go to another part of your code and comment that out instead, run it, and maybe your error goes away, and then you can sort of identify where the error is happening. So you can also comment out chunks of your code this way. We call that commenting out. So that's how you sort of do comments. I'll try to do some more of those in future videos, but I should have said that one earlier. Anyway, so this video covered loops and kind of showed you that you can make little comments to yourself in that way. Alright, have a good one.